An extremely dangerous criminal is terrifying, but a criminal who is skilled at disguise is even more so, because you never know what thoughts lie behind that smiling face. An extremely dangerous criminal will reveal their twisted mind, but a criminal who is good at disguise can hide those dark thoughts, showing only a gentle and harmless side. Such people are often more evil than the former. The story takes place in Los Angeles, California. Located in the southwestern part of California, Los Angeles is the second largest city in the United States and is often referred to as the City of Angels. According to FBI research, in 1990, the combined murder rates of New York and Los Angeles accounted for 13.8% of all murders in the United States. In the 1970s, serial killer Rodney James Alcala murdered at least 9 women and girls across the country, though the true number of deaths is likely over 100. He was imprisoned for sexual assault but continued to rape and kill after being released. Autopsies of some victims revealed that he would strangle the women until they lost consciousness, then wait for them to regain consciousness before ultimately killing them. On July 24, 2021, Rodney James Alcala, known as the Dating Game Killer, died at a hospital near a California prison at the age of 77. Rodney earned the nickname Dating Game Killer after appearing on the reality TV show The Dating Game in 1978. In 1980, he was sentenced to death for the murder of 12-year-old Robin Christine Samso. In 1984, the California Supreme Court overturned the conviction and Rodney's murder case was retried. In 1986, Rodney was sentenced to death for the second time for the murder of Samso. However, in 2003, the federal appellate court overturned this sentence. In 2010, an Orange County jury convicted Rodney of 5 counts of first-degree murder. The killing of Samso, the 1977 murder of 18-year-old Jill Terry Barcombe and 27-year-old Georgia Marie Wicksted, the 1978 murder of 31-year-old Charlotte Lee Lamb, and the 1979 murder of 21-year-old Jill Marie Parenteau. He was sentenced to death for the third time. Rodney was born on August 23, 1943, in San Antonio, Texas, in the central United States. He had 2 sisters, and when he was 8 years old, the family moved to Mexico with their father. However, 3 years later, his father abandoned the family, leaving the young Rodney and his sisters to endure a harsh life. Eventually, they had no choice but to move back to the United States with their mother, settling in a suburb of Los Angeles, where they struggled to get by on her meager salary. Rodney was very good-looking from a young age, and the neighbors adored him. He was also smarter than his peers. However, during his teenage years, he began to exhibit a unique personality. He was reclusive, withdrawn, and indifferent to the warmth and care of those around him. In 1961, at the age of 17, Rodney joined the U.S. Army, where he worked in a clerical role. His IQ test score was an impressive 160, far above the average IQ range of 85 to 115, indicating that Rodney was a genius. In 1964, at the age of 21, Rodney was diagnosed with a mental disorder. A psychiatrist in the military later diagnosed him with antisocial personality disorder, also known as sociopathic personality disorder. This condition is characterized by high levels of aggression, a lack of shame, and severe social impact. It typically begins to manifest in childhood or adolescence and can persist into adulthood or throughout a person's life. Due to the severity of his antisocial personality disorder, Rodney was discharged from the Army by military psychiatrists. After his discharge, he used his exceptional abilities to enroll in the UCLA School of Fine Arts. If his life had continued on this path, it could have been remarkable, but in reality his inner world was deeply dark, and he pursued these studies only to better disguise himself. In 1968, Rodney graduated from the School of Fine Arts, and it was from this year that he began his criminal journey. One day, a little girl was about to walk to school when a beige, unlicensed car started following her. A passing driver witnessed the scene and saw the man in the car stop, holding some snacks, and invite the little girl into the vehicle. The passing driver found this suspicious and followed the beige car to an apartment building. Along the way, he called the Los Angeles Police Department to report the strange situation. Coincidentally, a police officer was patrolling Sunset Boulevard at the time, and after receiving the report, he immediately headed to the apartment. When the officer arrived at the apartment, he knocked on the door and said, "Hey, I'm the police." "Open the door. I need to talk to you." A man appeared at the door with an extremely sinister look on his face. He said, I, I was taking a bath. Give me a moment to get dressed. The officer gave him 10 seconds, but after a few minutes passed with no sound from the door, the officer, sensing something was wrong, kicked it open. After checking the living room and finding no one, he walked into the kitchen. On the floor lay a naked little girl, covered in bruises and with blood still flowing from her head. The kitchen was splattered with blood and marked with drag marks, and a photo of the girl was discarded on the ground. Next to the girl was a metal bar with clear marks of strangulation. The officer initially suspected it was used to strangle the girl into unconsciousness. He checked for her breathing by placing his fingers on her nose but found none. Believing she was dead, he frantically searched the house for the perpetrator, who had already escaped through the window minutes earlier. Returning to the kitchen, the officer noticed that the girl's chest was rapidly rising and falling, indicating she was still trying to breathe. He immediately alerted the Los Angeles Police Department to clear the traffic and transported the girl to the hospital as quickly as possible. After medical examination, it was found that the girl had been repeatedly assaulted and had injuries from the metal bar. Fortunately, after emergency treatment, the girl survived, but remained in a coma for over a month and needed several more months to recover before being discharged. The little girl was 8-year-old Tali Shapiro, a sweet and innocent child. After her release, Tali's parents moved from Los Angeles to Mexico to help her recover psychologically. In an interview later, Tali said, "I don't remember going up to the apartment, and I don't remember anything after that." Meanwhile, a large number of police officers began searching the apartment. They found numerous pieces of photography equipment and a large number of photos, all of which featured young girls. They also discovered the perpetrator's ID card, identifying him as Rodney James Alcala, a student at UCLA. The Los Angeles police then contacted a professor at UCLA to inquire about Rodney. The professor said, "Yes, to us, he seemed like a good person. He would never harm anyone." Meanwhile, Rodney, who had fled, changed his name to John Berger and enrolled in the New York University Tisch School of the Arts, where he studied filmmaking under the renowned French director Roman Polanski. On June 24, 1971, a woman named Cornelia Michael Crilly, a 23-year-old TWA flight attendant, was murdered in her New York neighborhood. She had recently moved to this area, which was known for being home to many flight attendants and secretaries. Her boyfriend, Leon Borstein, described Cornelia as having a beautiful face and a very polished demeanor. On the day of the move, Borstein found her door locked and received no response when he called her. When the police arrived, they discovered a shocking scene. Cornelia was naked, strangled with her own nylon stockings, and had bite marks on her breasts. At the time, New York City had a high murder rate, with nearly 2,000 murders in 1971, making it difficult for the police to solve Cornelia's case. The lack of widespread DNA technology and the absence of any suspects led to the case becoming a cold case. In the same summer that Cornelia was murdered, Rodney obtained a job as a counselor at a children's arts camp in New Hampshire, where he taught kids how to make films. At this time, he was using the alias John Berger. In 1971, two campers recognized Rodney, who was wanted by the FBI, and reported him to the police. After his arrest, he was extradited back to California. However, an unexpected complication arose during preparations for his trial. The previous victim, Tali, had moved to Mexico with her family, and her family refused to let her testify in Rodney's trial to protect her privacy. Due to the lack of a key witness, the judge could not convict Rodney and had no choice but to release him. Less than 2 months after his release from prison, Rodney lured a 13-year-old girl to the edge of a cliff and harmed her. This time, with both witnesses and evidence, Rodney was sentenced to 2 years in prison. After serving his sentence, he was again released on parole. After his release from prison, despite his criminal record, Rodney used his charisma and knowledge of art and film to disguise himself as a professional photographer, photographing hundreds of women. Gradually, Rodney used his reputation as a locally known photographer to approach his victims, most of whom were women. He would first incapacitate and subdue them, then torture them until they died in fear, and finally take their earrings as trophies. Rodney's next victim was Ellen Hover, a 23-year-old musician and artist. Ellen was a sweet person with a gentle soul. She came from a prominent entertainment family. Her father owned the famous Hollywood nightclub Ciro's, and her godfathers were Sammy Davis Jr. and Dean Martin. On July 15, 1977, Ellen disappeared. When the New York police began their investigation, they found only a calendar note that mentioned she was going to meet someone named John Berger. On November 9, 1977, Rodney lured 18-year-old runaway Jill Terry Barcombe with smooth talk. After engaging in inappropriate behavior, he brutally killed her and left her body on a hillside near Hollywood. To prevent identification, he used rocks to disfigure her face and head, then ended her life using belts, stockings, and pants in 3 separate instances. On December 16, 1977, Rodney committed similar acts against 27-year-old nurse Georgia Marie Wickstead in his Malibu apartment. He struck her head with a hammer, strangled her with stockings, and left her naked in the bathroom. On June 24, 1978, Rodney engaged in inappropriate acts with his legal secretary, 31-year-old Charlotte Lee Lamb, in his apartment. He then beat her and strangled her with shoelaces, leaving her in the laundry room of an apartment building in El Segundo. On September 3, 1978, Rodney appeared on a dating show called The Dating Game. Clearly, the show staff did not thoroughly investigate Rodney's background, as the host introduced him as a successful photographer, skilled in skydiving and motorcycle riding. Many of the female contestants were impressed by his charming smile and smooth talk. Cheryl Bradshaw, Rodney's on-screen date, received an invitation from him after the show, but declined without hesitation. She said, "My intuition told me Rodney was dangerous. He repeatedly suggested spending a special night together, but I felt scared and even got goosebumps." On February 14, 1979, Rodney picked up 15-year-old Monique Hoyt in Riverside County. He drove her to his apartment where they spent some time in the room. The next day, they went to a secluded mountainous area where Rodney took inappropriate photos of her and images of her being harmed. He then bound and gagged her, continuing the assault. While Rodney was in a gas station restroom on the way back to Riverside County, Monique managed to escape and reported the assault to the police. However, Rodney's mother posted his bail. On June 13, 1979, 21-year-old computer operator Jill Marie Parenteau left work early to attend a baseball game. The next morning, when she failed to show up for work, police visited her Burbank apartment and found signs of forced entry. Jill was discovered dead, naked on the bathroom floor, having been sexually assaulted, beaten, and strangled. On June 20, 1979, 12-year-old Samantha Samso went missing while biking to her ballet class in Huntington Beach, California. 12 days later, police received a tip and discovered Samantha's body on a hillside. Due to the hot weather, the body had decomposed significantly, and the coroner could not determine if she had been sexually assaulted. Investigators later found Samantha's earrings in a storage locker rented by Rodney. Following this lead, Rodney was immediately arrested and charged. However, a woman testified that Rodney had not been to the beach, but police dismissed her testimony, suspecting she might be romantically involved with Rodney and potentially providing false evidence to cover up his crimes. In 1980, Rodney was sentenced to death by the Orange County Superior Court. However, this verdict was overturned by the California Supreme Court due to police misconduct. Specifically, they had informed the jury of his criminal history prematurely, which could have biased their decision. Additionally, the evidence, which consisted of only a single earring, was deemed insufficient to conclusively prove his guilt. In 1986, after new evidence was collected, Rodney was retried and convicted of first-degree murder. In 2001, a U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals panel overturned the death sentence, ruling that a key witness who had discovered the body had not testified in court due to memory issues. The absence of this crucial witness led to another legal stalemate. While in prison, Rodney wrote a book claiming his innocence and sought compensation from the government for his incarceration. By 2003, DNA testing had become a standard tool in criminal investigations. Since the establishment of the first national DNA database in 1995, many countries had followed suit, And by this year, 76 countries had either established or planned to establish DNA databases. DNA analysis revealed that the DNA found at 2 previous rape scenes in Los Angeles matched Rodney's DNA. Additionally, DNA extracted from an earring found in Rodney's storage locker matched the DNA of the victim, Samso. With this conclusive evidence, Rodney could finally be convicted. Moreover, the police identified Rodney as the perpetrator in 4 additional murder and rape cases: 18-year-old Jill Barcombe, 27-year-old Georgia Wixted, 31-year-old Charlotte Lamb, and 21-year-old Jill Parento. In addition to these confirmed cases, authorities suspected Rodney might be involved in over 100 other murder and rape cases. However, due to the passage of time or lack of critical evidence, these cases could not be pursued further. 2006, prosecutors brought charges against Rodney for the newly confirmed 4 murder cases, along with the previously known Samso murder case. The California Supreme Court approved the prosecution. In February 2010, Rodney faced trial for the 3rd time, this time for 5 counts of murder. The 5 victims had all been sexually assaulted and then killed. This trial saw Rodney defending himself without a lawyer. During the trial, Rodney demonstrated his high intelligence and psychological composure, responding to questions with a calm and detached demeanor, even joking and smiling in court. Over the course of 5 hours, he played multiple roles in the case, even engaging in self-questioning and answering. However, despite his eloquence, he could not refute the overwhelming DNA evidence. Additionally, the then 8-year-old victim Tali courageously testified in court. Seeing no way out, Rodney ceased his defense and ultimately requested the judge not to sentence him to death, a request that was not granted. In 2010, the New York police released 215 photographs taken by Rodney, hoping to identify unknown victims. The photos showed women ranging from their teens to their 30s, from various states across the U.S. Many families recognized their missing loved ones among the images. The police also had over 900 more photos that were not released due to privacy concerns. In 2016, Rodney was also implicated in the 1977 murder of Christine Ruth Thornton in Wyoming, but prosecutors chose not to extradite him for trial. Additionally, police suspected him of killing Pamela Lamson in the San Francisco Bay Area in the fall of 1977. However, the DNA collected from that crime scene was too degraded to test, so no charges were filed. Rodney died on July 24, 2021, while awaiting execution in California at the age of 77. Perhaps around us, there are some antisocial personalities quietly hiding. Studies suggest that 1 in every 25 people may have such traits, a proportion that seems surprisingly high. Fortunately, most of these individuals are not murderers and do not commit such violent acts. They are unburdened by emotions, clever and manipulative, with unpredictable personalities but without anxiety. They are skilled at disguise and approach problems with calm, clarity, and organization. Although they are fully aware of societal norms, they are indifferent to them. In reality, their pursuit is solely for their own goals, and they are willing to use any means necessary to achieve them.